Hi, Orlando area homeowners. If you're a foreign national thinking about selling your home, do you know that the IRS is going to try to take 15% of your proceeds at closing? Yep, 15%. And the title company may be required to withhold that amount and send it to the IRS. And if you're a buyer of a property owned by a foreign national, the IRS makes you liable if that 15% is not withheld. Hi, I'm David Dowell, real estate broker and real estate attorney. There's a tax law called Firpta, F-I-R-P-T-A, which stands for Foreign Investment in Real Estate Tax Act. Now, this law, which most people have never heard of, it requires the withholding of 15% of your proceeds at closing if you are a qualified foreign national seller. Now, for example, if you sell your property for, let's say, $500,000, then you may be required to withhold $75,000 and submit it to the IRS. Now, if you're selling, you need to know about this law, right? And if you're the buyer, it's extra important for you to know this because the IRS makes it your responsibility to have that money withheld. Now, none of this seems fair, but this is the law, folks. Most realtors don't explain this to their clients because most don't properly understand it. Some have no clue what it is. But more importantly, you need to know how to avoid it if you're a seller. Here in Central Florida, we have a lot of foreign national homeowners. So this comes into play quite a bit. So you need to at least understand what this is. Now, the purpose of this law is basically to ensure that the IRS can collect any income taxes from the sale of your property, if any, that you may owe. You see, if you're an American citizen and you live here, it's easy for the IRS to collect taxes from you at the end of the year. Due to the fact that you have a social security number, which they use to track you down, and you probably have a job, maybe even other properties. So it's not difficult. But a foreign national may have none of these and could easily take their proceeds home with no way for the IRS to follow up and collect. That's why they want to withhold the 15% at closing. You see, they then hold this amount until you file your income taxes at the end of the year. So it sort of forces you to file an income tax return, right? Now, if it turns out you owe no income tax, then the IRS is going to return the money they're holding, eventually. If, on the other hand, you do owe some taxes, they're going to take those taxes out of what they're holding, and then they're going to return the balance to you, eventually. But who wants the government to hold your money? I wouldn't. So there are some things you can do, some ways to avoid this withholding from ever even kicking in the first place. Now, first, you can sign an affidavit saying that Firpta doesn't apply to you. If you have a U.S. Social Security number or tax ID, as many of our foreign nationals do, or perhaps you've got a corporation registered somewhere here in the U.S., then executing a specific affidavit for the title company may be sufficient. Second, if the property sells for $300,000 or less, and the buyer intends to use it as his or her main residence, then Firpta doesn't apply. Not sure why this exemption applies, but it does. In fact, I've known realtors who will list a property for just under $300,000 just for this reason. Other realtors may not accept offers from buyers unless the buyer signs some kind of affidavit stating that the house will be his or her primary residence. I would never advise my sellers to do this, but you know what? Some do. Now, third, if no other exemption applies, then you can file a form with the IRS before your closing is complete, which basically says you don't think you're going to owe any income taxes, or at least not enough that equals the amount of money that the IRS wants you to withhold. You're probably going to need an accountant to help you with this, but it's well worth it, folks. So basically what happens is you do a little calculation to show your situation to the IRS, and then if they agree, they'll give you a certificate which allows the title company to not withhold any of your proceeds, or more likely, to only withhold a smaller amount of your proceeds. This is really a complicated matter, but you need to be aware of it. If you have any questions about this or any other procedure to sell your home, feel free to contact me by text, phone, or email, and I'm happy to discuss.